All right, so my name is Audrey McGlinchey. I am the City Hall reporter for KUT. Thank you all for coming out. This is the District 6 City Council Candidate Forum hosted by KUT and the Austin Monitor. This is our third City Council Candidate Forum of this election season. So we host these forums every time there's a City Council election so that residents can better get to know their local candidates. These are the people who represent you in discussions about such things as affordable housing, police funding, transportation. So far, we've hosted forums for candidates in districts 2 and 4, and we'll be hosting 2 more of these for candidates in districts 7 and 10. But as I mentioned, tonight we're talking to candidates for District 6, which makes up much of far northwest Austin, including part of Williamson County. 3 candidates are looking to unseat the incumbent, Jimmy Flanagan, who has represented District 6 since 2017. Now, I've told the candidates all the rules, so I'll skip over that. But for folks who are watching, this is how it will work. Each candidate will get 90 seconds for an opening statement. This is their opportunity to introduce themselves to you, the voters. Then we'll dive right into questions. I have some general questions and some questions specific to District 6, including questions that were submitted by constituents. And each candidate will get a minute to answer each question. They'll also get 30 seconds of rebuttal if another candidate mentions them by name. Then we'll do a minute of closing statements, and that'll wrap up the hour. We're going to go to 8 p.m. So stay within your time. I'll give you a 10-second warning. If you go over your time, you will be muted. So as I mentioned before, we're going to go in ballot order. So this is the order in which folks who are voting in District 6 will see the candidates on their ballot. So we're going to start with Jimmy Flanagan, who, as I mentioned, is the incumbent. And Jimmy, as I said, you get 90 seconds for an opening statement. So take it away.
Thank you, Audrey. My name is Jimmy Flanagan. I am a 20-year resident of Northwest Austin, a former small business owner, former president of the LGBT Chamber of Commerce, organizer of the Northwest Austin Coalition, and the current council member for District 6. I'm also the first openly gay man and the first Williamson County resident to serve on the Austin City Council. In the last 6 years, even before being a council member, I have held more than 60 different town halls, meetings, and community events to listen and engage on every topic facing our city. I've turned that unparalleled community engagement into solutions, new roads and infrastructure in all corners of the district, slowing the rise of government spending, and being a policy innovator during the pandemic, as well as leading on citywide issues of affordability, equity, and justice as chair of the Judicial and Public Safety Committees, chair of the Regional Economic Development Board, chair of the Community Advancement Network, and representing the city at a regional level, Campo and Capcog, taking District 6 to the head of the table on some of the most critical issues facing our city and our region. I have proven my ability to deliver solutions and earned the trust and support of the partners you need to get it done. I've earned endorsements from labor, environmental, and business groups, as well as the EMS Association, and I'm proud to be the only Democratic Party endorsed candidate in the race, including every Democratic club endorsement decided by District 6 community leaders, including the support of 5 District 6 State House members. But the work is far from done, and that's why I'm running for re-election and I'm asking for your support.
All right, thank you. Mackenzie Kelly, you are up next, opening statement.
Thank you to KUT and the Austin Monitor for hosting this forum tonight. My name is Mackenzie Kelly. I am an Austin City Council candidate for District 6. I'm a mother, a wife, and a person deeply invested in our community. Austin's in my blood. I raised my daughter here. My parents live in our district. My brother and his fiance live in our district, as do my in-laws. I was born and raised here. I've learned life's hard lessons here, and now I roll up my sleeves to help others navigate life's challenges in this ever-changing city. I spent 8 years in the community as a volunteer firefighter. I've led volunteer cleanup efforts of the overflowing homeless camps under our expressways, and I've worked hand in hand with our first responders. As president of Take Back Austin, I've fought to hold our politicians accountable. The city of Austin is facing multiple crises right now: a crisis of homelessness, a crisis of public safety, and a crisis of affordability. I will advocate for our police department to be fully staffed and well-funded but reformed. I will fight to keep our taxes low, and I will ensure that our homeless population is taken care of through policies that work towards identifying and treating the systematic problems that cause homelessness. Those types of solutions are safe and compassionate. What we are currently doing is neither of those things. You can learn more about my campaign by looking for my Facebook page by searching Mackenzie Kelly for Austin City Council, or on my website, MackenzieForAustin.com. I hope that you'll consider me to be your next Austin City Councilwoman. Thank you.
Thanks, Mackenzie. And then we have Jennifer Mushtaller. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Thank you. I'm Dr. Jennifer Mertchchaler. I'm a board-certified physician and surgeon and president of my limited district and 1,200 member homeowner association. I was asked to run for office by my neighbors and constituents because District 6 and the city of Austin deserve better than what they received from the incumbent. The incumbent has made decisions that do not represent his constituents. 1. His vote to lift the camping ban, which has unleashed a public health endangerment and hurt local businesses. 2, his vote to defund the police, which means that neighborhoods, including those in District 6, will not have adequate police protection. 3, his vote to eliminate single-family neighborhoods, which illegally attempts to rezone and take away notice and protest rights of property owners. 4, his campaigning for the fiscally questionable $7 billion Project Connect is consistent with his own personal financial record as described in the Austin Bulldog, and we wonder if we will be forever indebted. 5, the manner in which he disagrees with others, particularly women, and I will quote Councilmember Tovo from the October 15, 2019 work session, quote, "The way in which you continue to seem to need to diminish the work of your colleagues is just unacceptable," end quote. District 6 deserves a representative who has demonstrated good judgment, proven fiscal responsibility, and who will represent their interest above a personal agenda. I would like to be that person for District 6. Thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer. And since, we're still in opening statements, but since you mentioned some of Flanagan's votes, Jimmy, I'm going to give you 30 seconds to rebut. And I know there was a lot there, but you have 30 seconds.
Well, unfortunately, my opponent is misrepresenting a lot of the work that the council is doing. And frankly, this district does not want to go back to the days where our council member goes on the attack, twisting the work of others and people's personal lives into the juiciest slam, but unable to articulate actual solutions to the problems that our community faces. And I'm looking forward to getting into the actual issues in this forum so I can articulate exactly what we're doing to get these problems solved.
All right, and we will get into those issues. Dee, your opening statement, 90 seconds.
Hi, my name is Dee Harrison, and thank you, Audrey and KUT, for inviting me to this forum. I'm a candidate, obviously, for District 6. And since I first moved here in the early 80s, the population of Austin has more than doubled. And the city's changed from a no growth to a go growth outlook. But that growth should never be at the expense of our neighborhoods or by placing ever increasing tax burdens on individual taxpayers and our small businesses. Austin is currently facing challenges unlike anything we've ever faced before. We're in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic and a public health crisis. We have spiraling unemployment, and our small businesses are going out of business by incredible numbers. We have a worsening economy. We're facing protests and social unrests on the systemic racism that's been rotting our country for generations. My education, training, and professionalism makes me uniquely qualified to serve on District 6 and on the City Council. I've established, coordinated, and served on countless community coalitions and working groups at the local, state, and federal levels throughout my 30-year career with the state. I'm the only candidate with experience in public safety, criminal justice system, strategic and crisis planning, and emergency management. Thank you.
All right, thank you all. So we're going to hop into questions. And again, as I mentioned, we'll now start from the bottom of the ballot and go up. So as I mentioned before, I'm gonna ask some more general citywide questions first, and then we'll get into District 6 specific questions. Let's start with the reason we're all on Zoom right now, this COVID-19 pandemic. How would you characterize the city's handling of the COVID-19 pandemic? What, if anything, do you think the city should be doing differently? So Dee, we're going to start with you, and you have a minute.
The city's response to COVID-19 has been uneven at best. I place part of the blame on that on the information we've been getting from our national and state leadership. Again, this is a novel virus, which means we've never seen it before. We don't have a history of it. We don't have a background with it. We obviously don't have a vaccine for it. All of those issues could have been addressed via messaging. We could have said, what we know now is ABC 1, 2, 3, and what we are going to do is ABC 1, 2, 3. Failing that messaging, it caused a lot of confusion in the community. A lot of people were angry. A lot of people didn't understand. And a lot of people are protesting, you know, by God, people wear a mask. Thank you.
And Jennifer, city's handling of COVID-19.
Thank you. Well, I would like to take a moment to applaud my medical colleagues and the medical community for the work that they've done for Austin. I just couldn't be more proud of how 3 different hospital systems, UT and Austin Public Health and Travis County Med Society, stepped up together to coordinate resources, plans, and contingency plans, and advise the mayor and the council on what really needed to be done. You know, unfortunately, there's been a pattern of defunding and lack of funding and lack of medical leadership since about the 1990s. And I believe we need to redirect and invest in our public health system, particularly because we're seeing a disproportionate number of illness in our Latino community and a disproportionate death rate in our African American community. Thank you.
Mackenzie.
Yeah, I'd like to start by saying that the initial messaging from the city when COVID occurred was very confusing. First, South by Southwest was on, then it was off, and then our community leaders came together and created a joint message suggesting that we as a community go out and support local businesses, which would have been great, except with COVID, we now know you can't be around people and you must social distance. I think that the messaging was convoluted at first, and our leadership did not show a united front as they should have in order to lead us as a community into a better recovery. I saw a lot of different political pandering happening during that time. I saw disagreements between our local, state governments, and that sort of thing should never happen. From my time in emergency management, I know that all disasters start local and that we have to work together with other forms of government in order to be successful. Thank you.
And Jimmy.
Thanks, Audrey. I'm really proud of the response the city has had. It was challenging times with the governor changing his emergency orders multiple times, even admitting that the solution when San Antonio found the loophole was somehow how public policy is supposed to be made in the state of Texas. But Austin persevered. We partnered with our public health agencies. And over the last 5 years, we have seen historic investments in public health in our community, investments that I think have made us stronger and have made us better prepared. And we haven't seen the types of negative impacts that have been present in some other communities. And I'm mostly really proud of Austinites for wearing their masks, for avoiding unsafe situations, and taking care of each other the best we could. There have been so many great private initiatives stepping up when the federal and state support dried up. And I think Austin is really something to be commended.
All right, thank y'all. Staying with the pandemic for another question here. The pandemic has showed us how little reach the city has within communities of color, particularly non-English speaking communities. What are your suggestions for improving relationships and communication with these neighborhoods? So again, we'll start at the top of the ballot with Jimmy Flanagan.
You know, part of the challenge for reaching into communities of color is the long-term distrust that they have with government. One of the initiatives that we have pushed is for continued partnership between the city government and outside entities. I've worked closely with the Hispanic Contractors Association to try and get them the resources that they need to reach their essential workers that they represent. We've stood up additional task forces from community leaders from those communities. You really have to go where the people are. And we've stood up additional programs that partner with those entities. One of the things that I'm proud of is that as the council has responded to COVID, programs that I've created to help small businesses and nonprofits and childcare providers have done so through third-party partnerships that have a better reach into our community and partnering with POC-led entities, which is the best way to reach those communities.
Mackenzie, one
Yes,
minute.
thank you for asking that very important question. I think that language access would make it a lot easier for people to communicate. Obviously, there will be barriers and mistrust in the community for what the government's trying to do, especially for people who have that innately inside of them. Maybe they haven't even had a positive interaction with the government before. But possibly one solution to that would be creating advocacy programs and people who might work for the city that could do outreach programs in order to assist with that. Providing resources in both English and Spanish would be imperative to make that better, quite like they do for hard of hearing residents during different disasters or public addresses that happen. I also think it's a value to provide ESL support to those who would like to seek speaking English as a second language. Thank you.
And Jennifer.
Thank you. Well, I think part of the problem developed because when we went to shelter in and essential workers continued to work, that disproportionately includes a lot of our Latino communities and our African American communities. And they went back to work without proper PPE and without proper education on how to use that PPE and what precautions to take. In the hospital systems, we were fortunate to have some time to prepare. And so we maintained a less than 1% conversion rate amongst all of our staff within the hospital. So this says that we can do these if we're taking the right precautions. The other issues relate to intergenerational living and the exposures that are brought into families. Again, I think we need to direct more funding towards Austin Public Health so that we can reach into the communities for bilingual education and resources.
And Dee, go ahead. Oh, do you have to unmute yourself? There you go. I'll start the clock again. Go ahead.
Public health outreach into non-English speaking and other underserved and at-risk communities has always been problematic, and it will continue to be problematic as long as we have not built the foundation for a trusting relationship with the government. As long as we see the government as the enemy, we're still going to have those kinds of problems. I agree with Dr. Mushtaller that some of the hospitals have done some fabulous outreach programs. We need to extend the outreach programs to our clinics. We need to have more clinics in underserved areas because those do serve as a community gathering point for our underserved and non-English speaking community members. You know, our emergency management office has a robust outreach program for non-English speaking individuals and disabled individuals. We should bring them to the table to help us address this issue. Thank you.
All right, thank you all so much. So Dee, you'll start with the next question, going from bottom of the ballot up. Going on to another very important topic at this time. In August, I believe it was, time takes on its own meaning in a pandemic, but in August, city council members voted to cut millions from the police budget. Now, how many millions kind of depends on who you talk to, but it's accurate to say they cut 100 million, but most of that represents moving departments out from under the police department. And it was about 20 million of that was cut immediately and reinvested in other city departments or city projects. So question for you all, and I actually am going to have a different question for the incumbent here, but for the folks who are running to hold this seat for the first time, here's your question. Do you agree with the proposed reduction to the Austin police budget? Why or why not? And Dee, we'll start with you. You have a minute.
I definitely disagree with the proposed reductions. Instead of seeking sustainable restorative justice solutions, the council cut the budget and it proposes to move victim services out of the police department, undoing an effort that we in crime victim services at the time, along with crime victim survivors, victim rights advocates, the police and the prosecutors worked for years to put into place. One of the proposals I read calls for cutting dollars to drunk driving enforcement. that also undermines decades of effort by the friends and families of people and children and that were maimed and murdered by drunken drivers in the city of Austin, the state of Texas, and all across the country. I believe it was a terrible misstep on the part of the city council, one that's going to have long-lasting repercussions that we can't even begin to conceive of now. Thank you.
Thank you, Dee. And Jennifer, go ahead.
Absolutely not. First, we need to reinstate our cadet classes. Now, they had recruited one of the most diverse and well-accomplished group of men and women who were willing to come and serve our community. And we have an attrition rate and a loss rate coupled with open headcount that is not allowing them to cover their districts right now and not allowing them to cover their sectors. There have been cuts to the Austin Parks Police. There have been cuts to the Lake Police. A week ago, I had a patient present to my office who had been raped over the weekend. And I could not get response to come to my office to do an intake for this young lady. Thankfully, we were able to escalate the situation and get a counselor on the phone who was willing to meet with her. But traffic fatalities are up, the population is growing, and this is not the way to make our communities safer.
Mackenzie, go ahead.
Thank you for asking that question. I absolutely do not believe with our current reimagining of the police department. Currently, for me, and I think for a lot of the people I've spoken to in our district, part of the role of government is to make us feel safe. Public safety should be paramount. We cannot claim fiscal responsibility at the risk of public safety. We need to support our officers and make meaningful police reforms, but we cannot defund our police department without giving them the proper resources in order to do their jobs. This might look like some sort of additional training, which would result in better decisions when faced with responses to resistance encounters. I don't think that it's a great idea to make knee-jerk reactions or to pander to what ifs or reimagining what public safety looks like. It's going to ultimately cause our community to see a rise in criminal behavior like we have already. So I'm against defunding the police department or our current reimagining of public safety. Thank you.
Thank you. And then Jimmy, since we obviously know that you voted for the cuts, I just wanted to phrase the question a little differently, but you'll obviously have the opportunity to still answer the general question that I posed the other candidates. So you've said before that when you talk to constituents in D6 that they ask for more police officers. So how do you square what you hear from constituents with voting to cut millions from APD, including canceling cadet classes, which will result in fewer officers than years before?
So the vote that we took ultimately delayed cadet classes because the training academy is broken. There were whistleblowers that came out at the end of 2019 that led to a December 2019 resolution I co-sponsored, and we are currently letting a citizen task force review those cadet classes. By delaying those classes, we've been able to invest in permanent supportive housing, 911 call diversion, mental health support, substance abuse, a whole manner of different solutions, including the types of counselors that can respond to patients that are in crisis when there aren't police officers available. It's precisely the type of reform and innovation we're seeking. We have not cut DWI enforcement. We have not cut victim services. These are areas we are exploring for ways to do it better, because ultimately the police department over the last 10 years has nearly doubled in budget, but District 6 has not seen a doubling of service. We must find a better way, and that is the type of pragmatic and fiscally responsible reform I am leading as chair of the Public Safety Committee.
So I want to stick on the police discussion for a moment. So obviously the majority of candidates here have said that they do not agree with the reduction in the Austin police budget. But I am curious, the city council has committed to what they call reimagining public safety. And I'm curious to hear from all the candidates what this might mean to you if, as we've said before, the majority of candidates, it does not mean cutting money. Does it mean something else to you? What issues within policing do you think should be prioritized? So we'll start with Jimmy.
We have initiated a very detailed analysis of 911 calls for the Office of Innovation, and we have discovered some real areas of opportunity where we currently send officers that we could absolutely be sending alternative services or other types of triage or fire or EMS. Almost a third of the calls that officers respond to are rated a low priority 3, where there's no risk to property or life. There are tens of thousands of calls to alarms. Almost over 90% are false alarms. We have mental health calls right now in a pilot program where we're able to divert hundreds of mental health calls where we were sending officers before that we're now able to handle through telemedicine or through our mental health first responder in partnership with Integral Care. And that program is expanding. Integral Care is saying with the expansion as a result of the reforms, we will hit 90 to 100% call diversion for these types of mental health calls. There's so much opportunity for innovation in a way that can provide better service and better safety to the community.
Thank you. And Mackenzie, if reimagining or changing policing does not look like cutting money from the budget, for you, what changes would you seek in the police department, if any?
Definitely. So I was actually having a discussion with a police officer who hangs out in the district, and he equated the defunding or reimagining of public safety to the trolley problem, which is a series of thought experiments in ethics and psychology with ethical dilemmas of whether sacrifice one person to save a larger number. So when we're talking about reimagining public safety, we are actually taking away from the ability to solve problems in a way that are tried and true that we know will work, to possibly hurt others in the process of changes. If you send a social worker to a problem where you need someone who is trained in de-escalation, then you could have problems and it could be disastrous. I don't think that we should risk that, but I do agree that we do need to reform the police department with better training so that they can respond to response to resistance incidents better. And I also think that we need them to be fully funded so that we can have them fully staffed. Thank you.
Jennifer, same question.
I'm confused. I don't understand what data they're looking at. The population is increasing. Traffic fatalities are up. Aggravated robberies and assaults are up. Homicides are up. I'm just baffled. We need to increase our officer staffing because they're already understaffed to do the job on the streets. This is what District 6 is telling you. As far as opportunities, because there are always opportunities to improve. I think we need to get to adequate staffing, because one of the problems right now is that once an officer has finished cadet training and they're out on the job, they don't have any opportunity to come back and do continuing education or drills. This is something we do in medicine. And I would advocate for the opportunity to come back and improve. That would give us a chance to root out violence and root out racial bias and give our officers a chance to train on the best of the newest techniques and work with their teams.
Thanks, Jennifer. Dee, go ahead. You got to unmute yourself again. There you go.
Historically, Austin has been a leader in thinking outside the box as far as police practices go. For years, the Austin Police Department had the most training requirements of any other police department in the state of Texas. It's still right up near the top as far as training goes. It has more than double the amount of hours required by the Texas Commission on Law Enforcement. It has moved from what used to be known as community-oriented policing more towards a problem-oriented policing, using data points and metrics to determine where you send your officers, where are they needed the most. You have to have a nimble and dynamic process for that to happen, and APD has been building one. It all falls back into our dispatch system or communication system. And yes, you need to have the goals and the metrics in place so they can make the decisions and the changes they need to get the people and the officers to where they need to be. Thank you.
Thanks, Dee. All right, so we're going to move away from policing, at least for now, and talk a little bit about transportation. So let me just pull up this question here. Okay, so starting with Dee this time and working our way back up the ballot, please tell the voters in District 6, do you support Proposition A on the November ballot, which would raise city taxes in order to help fund a $7.1 billion mass transit rail system, also known as Project Connect? And do you think there's enough in this proposal for District 6 residents? Dee, you have a minute. We'll start with you.
I do not support Proposition A. Right, all the data that was gathered that went into the making of Project Connect was gathered before COVID. Right now, we're seeing a monster change in the way people work and the way they move around. Everybody's working from home. We're going to have a lot of business people who say we can continue to do that. Some people will not be able to work from home. And those are the people we need to address. But our data is skewed. Our data at this point is wrong because of the impact of COVID-19. And what was the second part of the question? I'm sorry.
Do you think the proposal has enough for District 6 residents, offers enough for District 6 residents? And you have 10 seconds left.
I don't think it offers enough for District 6, but I also understand part of our job as council members is to take an overview and represent the whole entire city, not just our district. But no, I do not approve of Proposition A or Project Connect.
And Jennifer, go ahead.
Thank you. It's on the ballot for the voters to decide. I definitely have concerns with Project Connect. This represents the largest tax increase that we've ever faced. I actually had opportunity to tune into the KUT Views and Brews program where you had Dr. Kara Koppelman on, and that was a really great segment that I encourage a lot of people to watch because it presented both sides. But she did a really good job of articulating some of the concerns in bringing in this technology. $100 million per mile to tunnel underground, 5-member board appointment, no guarantee of federal funding. There's a lot to consider here. As far as District 6 is concerned, I think the incumbent failed to advocate for us. We really didn't get much out of this project at all. 4 points gets a park and ride.
And Jimmy, since Jennifer mentioned in her words your failure to advocate for more in Project Connect in District 6, I want to give you 30 seconds to respond to that, and then we'll go over to Mackenzie. So go ahead.
Sure. Well, there is a park and ride in 4 points, and for the majority of the district that lives along 183, the red line improvements are the first project to come in Project Connect. Those trains will start running at 15-minute headways, and that will tie a majority of the district into the larger system that will include one transfer rail to the airport. This is the type of system that provides a lot of important benefits to District 6 because D6 knows you cannot just keep widening 183 to solve a traffic problem. If you're like me and you lived through it, you know the traffic is worse when 183 got finished, than it was before we moved out here.
All right, Mackenzie, we'll go to you. Your thoughts on Proposition A.
Thank you so much for asking. I don't support Project Connect in its present form. It doesn't offer much of anything to D6. In fact, we could help solve problems with transportation dead zones with different bus routes being placed throughout the district better than we can serve our people here with Project Connect. It shouldn't be financed with property taxes. It's way too expensive and the economy is in a serious recession. Public transit is high risk in a pandemic. The project doesn't reflect future transportation needs or innovation. Austin should be innovative in its transportation needs. We should be a leader. Using antiquated rail lines does not make us a leader. And putting a massive property tax increase on the ballot in the middle of a pandemic recession and with an unemployment rate that exceeds 7.2% shows a lack of understanding and consideration to the residents of Austin. Thank you.
And Jimmy, you have a minute to tell us what you think about Proposition A.
Well, I'm proud to support Project Connect. I worked hard representing the city and the district and the region to ensure that we had a plan that was built for the future. We have not seen a plan like this come before the Austin voters, and it provides a level of infrastructure that is a multi-generational investment for the future. The funding mechanism is innovative. It will help solve the problem that other communities have failed, where you don't fund the future maintenance and operations. That's taken care of, and an independent board to oversee the project so we can eliminate politics from those future decisions. It's a really fantastic program, and ultimately we are going to get back to a place in this country where there is a vaccine, where people are going back to work. I think in the first couple of months we all thought Zoom was the future, and now we know we got to get back face to face with our friends and our colleagues at work. People will go back to work. We're already seeing the traffic go up. The unemployment rate is now down under 6%. Our economy is already starting to recover, but for some key industries, and this is ultimately going to help our most critical essential workers get to and from work.
All right, thank you all. We're going to switch gears a little bit, and I'm actually going to ask a question that an audience member, a constituent, submitted to us because I thought it was a pretty good question. And again, we'll start with Jimmy this time and going from the top of the ballot downwards. So this person writes, the council's decision to abolish the public camping ban to help the homeless has been an intensely debated and polarizing issue in Austin. Do you support the new public camping laws, or would you support initiatives to get the issue on the ballot and let Austin voters decide? So Jimmy, we're going to start with you, 1 minute.
Well, ultimately, the reason why you don't make camping illegal is because it shouldn't be illegal to not have a home. And when you talk to service providers like Caritas or Alan Graham with Mobile Loaves and Fishes, they will tell you that criminalizing the lack of housing is what prevents people from accessing the services you need to get out of that condition. This is a big, complicated public health problem that requires the system the council is already starting to fund. Major investments beginning in 2019, more investments this time around, including through the reimagining process, will build out the system that starts with workforce development, includes rapid rehousing, includes substance abuse and mental health, and ultimately includes public permanent supportive housing for those folks that are experiencing chronic homelessness. If you build the system right and you intervene at the moment someone has crisis, you can do it cheaper and faster and get folks back into self-sufficiency. For generations, cities, especially on the West Coast, failed to build that system, and that's why you see the problems there. That's why we're not going to further see those problems here.
Mackenzie, you have 1 minute.
Thank you. I want to echo, it's not illegal for people to not have a home, but what we need to do is repeal the camping ordinance and direct those people who are unhoused to resources. What happened with our unhoused population is an example of the council's acting without a well thought out plan and simply throwing money at a problem. We are not able to systematically address the needs of the homeless population by allowing them to live wherever they want, because we're not able to help them that way. Just the other day, I got several photos of an individual who's unhoused who is camping directly next to one of my campaign signs. He hangs his clothes up on my sign to dry. So I went over with my campaign team to make sure that he was okay. And he's looking for a job. People on my campaign are helping him to find a job. All we need to do is find out what resources and what the needs are of the unhoused population, attack those things systematically, and we can help them become housed again. Thank you.
Jennifer, go ahead.
Thank you. Well, from a medical background, I think they really don't understand how complex these issues are. They are not that simple. And, you know, we have the greatest per capita number of organizations that work to serve folks in our community and the homeless community. Austinites are very generous, but the city council went too far on the homeless ordinance and they didn't lay the groundwork for solutions. And now to call out by name organizations that have asked to be apolitical during this process is really inappropriate. People need to understand that how a person ends up so homeless can be a combination, a multitude of factors, and that's going to require a multidisciplinary team approach to help those people get into better living situations and to reduce the rates of recidivism. Thank you.
And Dee, your thoughts about the council's repeal of public camping bans?
Well, I agree with Dr. Mushtaller and Ms. Kelly. This is an incredibly complex problem that doesn't have an easy, simple, or inexpensive solution. Whatever we come up with and whatever we would decide to put on the ballot or not put on the ballot has to be strategically thought out first. It has to have a sustainable funding stream first. Before, you know, we have to have a plan. We can't just say, well, let's try this and let's try that. Again, we've tried all manner of things, but it is not safe, healthy, or secure for people to be living underneath bridges and under overpasses and on the side of the road or anywhere else they decide to camp out. We also have to figure out a way, and I'm sorry, I just lost my train of thought.
Well, sorry. Your time is up, Dee, so we'll stop you there. We'll stop you there, no worries. So we're gonna stick with housing for a second for the next couple of questions. And I was trying to pull up the typical price of housing in District 6, and it's at least homeownership is a little bit more affordable than other parts of the city, but obviously, home prices in Austin, especially during this pandemic, are just skyrocketing. It's becoming ever more unaffordable to live in the city of Austin. So this was actually a question submitted by an audience member that I asked at another forum that I just really appreciated. So I wanted to ask it of you all. How do you define affordable housing, and how would you build it in Austin? It's a lot for 1 minute, but Dee, you're gonna have the first go at it. So 1 minute. And you'll have to unmute yourself first.
There it is. How you define affordable, it should be based on what the median household income is in the city of Austin and where it is in the city of Austin. For those people that can afford a $750,000 house, more power to them. But there are a lot of people who are living at or below the poverty level in the city of Austin, and we haven't really addressed their housing needs. As we have to, there's all manner of substandard housing in Austin. Tearing it down and replacing it with high density, high income housing is not the answer. But we have to make sure, whatever it is, that we have a good plan for it. There's a lot of master planned communities out there that work very well. But again, we have to tie it to our median income. And right now, in the midst of COVID, that's cratering. And we have to be aware of that and make decisions based on our new normal. Thank you.
And Jennifer, how do you define affordable housing, and how do we get it in Austin?
I know how my mortgage lender defines it. It's got to represent a certain proportion of someone's net take-home pay so that they can also buy food and pay for transportation and other essential needs. There are a lot of opportunities within District 6 to bring in workforce and affordable housing, but I think one of the things we need to stop is we need to stop allowing developers to buy their way out of the affordable housing obligations, so that we really are bringing these into areas all across the city where it makes sense to do so, involving our neighborhoods on those decisions, and then providing that so that people have choices that put them close to their jobs or close to the schools where they'd like to enroll their children.
Thank you. Mackenzie?
I would define affordable housing as being able to live with 30 to 50% median family income in rent. We should incentivize developers to build units that accommodate those who make up the backbone of our society. This includes people who are musicians, teachers, and hardworking individuals who might not otherwise have the means to pay large amounts of their income to housing. It's no secret, if you live in Austin long enough, that you know that rent has gone up year over year. So has the cost of houses. It's increasingly difficult for longtime Austinites to be able to stay here. We cannot lose those longtime homeowners and residents who've helped make Austin the unique fabric that it is. I would be a true advocate for tax reduction and property tax reduction in Austin by advocating for an external city audit to find wasteful spending to help the taxpayer and those that want to live here longer. Thank you.
And Jimmy, how do you define affordable housing, and how do we get it?
Affordable housing is defined by the median family income, and the city has many programs that builds housing at 30% of median, 60%, 80%, even providing home ownership opportunities at 80 and 120% of median family income. These programs are backed in part by publicly approved bond elections, which have happened in the past. Sometimes they're created through tools and bonus programs in the Land Development Code, sometimes through programs that I have helped push through, like Affordability Unlocked, which allow developers to build affordable housing in a way that doesn't cost taxpayer money. We are building affordable housing in Austin. The Lakeline Station property is entering its second phase. It's a beautiful project on 620. We're also building senior affordable housing. We're building affordable housing on Anderson Mill Road. These are projects that are coming to us because we are maintaining our good partnerships with the state of Texas, who are funneling the HUD dollars through these affordable housing projects, but is not meeting supply. And that is ultimately the more difficult challenge to ask.
So again, sticking with housing for another question. So the city has for years been on a journey to rewrite the land development code, which was at some point called Code Next. And even though it's no longer called that, still often referred to as Code Next. And that's how folks might know it. This process is currently stalled in court. How important is it that the city restart this process? And how should the city approach that process when or if it picks it up again? So we'll start again at the top of the ballot with Jimmy, and you have a minute.
Thank you. Well, I know what my opponents are going to say because we get this question quite a bit. Ultimately, the lawsuit process is going to help with the appellate court to define what is ultimately a confusing state law that would undo the process as we've done in the past for the McMansion ordinance or for neighborhood conservation districts or other overlays. It really upended years and decades of regular city process. But ultimately what we need a land development code redone because the process we have right now doesn't require affordable housing developers to pay the fee in lieu that would match what it would mean to get that unit. That was going to be fixed in the new code. It doesn't fix the flooding issues that we have by reducing or limiting impervious cover. That was going to be fixed in the new code. It doesn't help address the transportation issues that could be caused. That was going to be addressed in the new code. We spent 8 years, and I helped end Code Next because that code was not working. And it may not have supported every compromise that we led into second reading, but ultimately we cannot continue to build a city built on a code in the 80s and then the last real estate crash. We are a modern city and we need a modern code.
Thanks, Jimmy. And Mackenzie.
Yeah, first of all, I'm in total agreement that the process should have been stopped. The land development code that was stopped did not take into consideration property owners' rights and what it had in a change on the code. I do believe in the Texas Constitution, and I absolutely agree that it should have been stopped in court. I do agree that the land development code needs to be changed, but it needs to be changed in a way that promotes quality of life. Neighborhoods are important. Families are important. I think earlier I mentioned my family still lives in District 6. They absolutely love their community. We need to promote that quality of life. I don't believe that driving families out of Austin is good for our community. And many times single family home ownership is important because for working people, land and property ownership is the only path for generational wealth. The Son of Code Next proposed code favors high density above all other concepts. And I don't agree with that. Thank you.
And Jennifer, how important is it to restart the city's process of rewriting its land development code? And if not, why?
Given the status of litigation, I think it would make a lot more sense to work with the neighborhoods. I really don't appreciate, and neither do my neighbors and constituents in the district, having our tax dollars used to sue ourselves to take away our property rights. So we need to abandon that process right now. We do need a new modernized land development code. It dates back to the 80s. It's cumbersome, it's burdensome, and the permitting processes are quite convoluted. We need to try a new approach. We need a broad, deliberative, consensus-based approach that brings in our neighborhoods. People who live in these neighborhoods wherever they are in the city, and I've talked to them all over the city, know where the opportunities are to bring in affordable housing and workforce housing. I support the development of TODs, and I think that we can do this a lot more effectively, but I don't think we should be suing ourselves over it.
And just because I like to simplify things for people, I want to say that TOD stands for Transit-Oriented Development, for folks who don't know what that means. And Dee, we'll end with you. 1 minute.
Thank you very much. Like you've referenced before, we do have to wait for the courts to give us an answer and provide us some direction as to how they interpret the law, because that's their job as the courts, obviously. Right now, we are facing a new economic normal. And as it currently stands, the land development code is based on our old normal, or what I like to call the before times, before COVID-19 came and got us. So we're going to have to look at some new metrics, because how people move around, where they live, where they work, all that is in the process of changing now. Whether these changes are going to be permanent or only temporary, we don't know at this time. We can't create something that's built on quicksand. We need to have a solid foundation for our decisions and when we're creating codes like the land development code. And high density does not necessarily create affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. Oh, so we have time for one more question, and it's going to be a District 6 question. And then after this question, we will have 1 minute each for closing statements. So an opportunity to address anything that anyone has said or to make another point. So this last question is, so District 6 has the largest Asian and Asian American population among the city council districts, representing a variety of languages and cultures. This is the largest, the fastest growing population in the state of Texas, I believe also in the city of Austin. How would you be sure to outreach, represent, and connect with such a diverse population? So Dee, we're gonna go ahead and start with you with 1 minute.
We have several Asian American community centers. We have one of the largest Buddhist populations in the state, and its headquarters is right off Palmer Road in Burnet, I believe. I've driven by it and been there several times. We also have another one in Jollyville. We need to have a concerted effort, because the Asian American community is growing by leaps and bounds inside the state of Texas, not just the city of Austin. We can look to our partners at the city of Houston, because they've done an Asian American community outreach for years, and it's very successful. The state legislature also has an Asian American caucus using the city of Houston and other Houston area representatives. And that's all I have to say about that. I'm sorry. Don't want to go over time.
No, you're good. You're good. Jennifer, you have 1 minute.
Thank you very much. So, the Asian American community is growing here for the same reasons that all of the Austin city is growing, for the job opportunities, for the quality of life, for the education opportunities for their families. And this is a neat opportunity to incorporate diverse culture into our communities, to celebrate each other. I was very proud of our dance team and their supporting culture, and they were able to perform at one of the Asian festivals a few years ago. So I think this is a really great opportunity, and I would like to see that grow.
And Mackenzie, how can you best represent a growing and large Asian American and Asian population in District 6?
Thank you so much for asking that question. So my daughter actually goes to school where she's the minority. The largest community of the population of her school is Asian American. And I believe that reaching out while in school is imperative for ensuring their future success in that community. I agree it's important to meet people where they are, such as at community centers, and to do outreach. But I've seen successful school programs to help engage those families in the community. It's absolutely correct that the tech industry has brought more of an Asian American population to District 6. But as I spoke with my daughter's best friend's family recently, they told us that they are here for a better quality of life. They want better for their kids. They want better for their family. And that's the real American dream. Everybody wants better than what they have. And we should absolutely do everything in our power to support that. Thank you.
And Jimmy, 1 minute.
Thank you. Well, I have worked incredibly hard over the last 4 years to engage and represent the Asian community, because like you said, District 6 represents the largest Asian community in the city. I have led on initiatives at the council level, expanding the Asian American Resource Center, ensuring those dollars get into bond elections, pushing through public-private partnerships to try and expand that program even farther. I have a weekly live show, the Clawback Live, and I have brought on multiple Asian community artists and creatives, always paying my musicians when they perform on my show. As a president of the LGBT Chamber of Commerce, I worked closely with the Asian Chamber of Commerce through the Mecca Chamber Alliance at the city to ensure Asian business owners are fully engaged in accessing the resources at the city. I'm supported by Amy Wong Mak of the Asian American Cultural Center on Jollyville. And I have also been endorsed by the Asian Democrats of Central Texas. And as chair of the Community Advancement Network, we are creating a language access fund to go beyond 1 or 2 languages and include as much of the Asian language diaspora as possible. No one has worked harder for the Asian community on the council than I have.
All right, thank you all. So those are all of our questions. And again, you'll each get 1 minute now, closing statements, say whatever has gone unsaid as of now. So we'll go back down the ballot, starting at the top with the incumbent, Jimmy Flanagan. You have a minute.
Thank you, Audrey, and thank you, KUT, for putting this together. You know, the challenges we face in this city are serious and complex. And the city and the district needs leadership unafraid to be honest and direct, but who critically understands the details and has shown the courage needed to take these issues head on. My record on the council has shown that I can bring solutions big and small, from streetlights in Avery Ranch, the flooding infrastructure in Angus Valley, to the upgrading of Anderson Mill Road or approving new fire stations in Canyon Creek. I have been laser focused on solving the issues that face District 6, and it's why I'm running for a second term and hope I can count on your vote. You can find out all of my accomplishments, great and small, on my website, jimmyflanagan.com.
All right, thank you. And Mackenzie, go ahead.
Thank you very much for hosting this for us tonight. It was a pleasure to be here and get out our issues and how we feel about different things happening in Austin. Again, I want to reiterate, Austin is in my blood. My entire family lives here, and I will do everything that's needed to fight for our district. The entire reason we went to 10-1 redistricting back in 2014 was so that we would have a tried and true representative of our district on the dais, someone who would be able to be reached out to and talked to so that they could actually have their concerns listened to and solved. When you have a problem, you should be able to go to your council person to solve it. And that's exactly what I intend to do by being a true advocate for the community as your representative on District 6. Thank you.
All right, thank you all. Jennifer.
Thank you. I'm Dr. Jennifer Mertchchaler. I'd like to thank KUT for hosting, and I'd also like to thank the other candidates for being willing to serve our city. I believe that my experience as a physician and an executive leadership will be a necessary asset to move our city forward through the challenges that we will be facing ahead. I believe in fair public input, accountability, and practical solutions. As a councilwoman, I will treat my constituents and my fellow council members and the public in a civil and respectful manner that is befitting of a professional in office. My agenda is to support the public health, public safety, to advocate for fiscal discipline, and to respect the property rights while seeking responsible and sustainable growth solutions. Please feel free to check out my platform. I'm very proud of the bipartisan support that this campaign is growing, and I hope to have the honor to serve you next year.
All right, and Dee, go ahead. You have a minute.
Hi, I'd like to thank you all for inviting us to participate in this candidates forum, and for everybody listening or watching out there, thank you for caring enough about your community to tune in and listen. I have no doubt that Austin is going to be able to rise to the challenge that it is facing right now with COVID-19, unemployment, the economy, and everything else that's going on, because we are Austin and we are a can-do city. That said, I think that this election coming up is going to be one of the most important elections in my lifetime for a variety of reasons. I urge everybody to read Propositions A and B and learn as much about them as you can, because how you vote is going to make a difference on what future councils are required to do as we go forward and grow as a city. It's going to take a lot of hard work. It's not going to be easy, but I hope you'll consider voting for me, because I would love to be in there fighting for everybody in this city of Austin. And thank you so much to all the other people on the candidates forum.
All right, thank you all. So this concludes our forum for City Council candidates for District 6 in far Northwest Austin. Thank you to Dee, Mackenzie, Jimmy, Jennifer. For folks who are tuning in, we live stream this on YouTube, but it'll be posted for you to watch, for you to watch at kut.org. Not live, recorded. That's what I was trying to say. And thank you to obviously KUT and the Austin Monitor who hosted this with us. Our next forum is on Wednesday, a little bit earlier than this one. It starts at 6:30, and that's for District 7 candidates. So a little bit south of District 6. So folks who are interested in that one, feel free to tune in on YouTube. Again, that's at 6:30. And then we'll have the last forum the week after that, the forum for candidates for District 10. So thank you all again for coming out, and have a good evening.